friend Pastor Steve, coming all the way from Dominion Towers TV here at our studios. It's a beautiful Sunday morning and I'm here to bring you the word of encouragement. I hope you've had a wonderful week. I've had a fabulous week. My week has been busy. The other weekend, remember, I was talking to you from Georgia, Atlanta, where I was ministering to bishops and pastors and men of God in a conference that was there. But I'm so glad that I'm able to come back to you today. I'm so glad that I'm able to come back to you today. Now, today I want to talk to you. How do you handle being ignored and being neglected? You know, it's amazing because when we talk about being ignored or when we talk about being neglected, we're basically talking about being disregarded. We are talking about people refusing to acknowledge you, or being disregarded intentionally, or being snubbed, not being paid attention to. Whenever we talk about ignored, we are actually talking about you being not given the attention that you are actually expecting. And the amazing thing is that many times whenever we are ignored, the next thing that will normally follow is being neglected. Now, being neglected is actually, I normally believe, this is my own definition, is that being neglected is actually the advanced part of being ignored. Neglected because whenever somebody neglects you, what they basically are telling you is that they don't care, or they're basically telling you that they are not bothered, they don't really care about whatever you're doing or whatever you have to say, or whatever you have to present to them. They really don't care about it, and they have nothing to do with you. They have actually left their hands off you, and they have no business whatsoever to do with you. And the amazing thing is that many times whenever somebody is neglected, whenever somebody is ignored, maybe I should start from there. Whenever somebody is ignored, there is always a tendency of bringing in an element of discouragement, a frustration, and many times you end up really wondering why are you being ignored. For example, if you were to walk into a meeting or into a party, for example, or even into a church meeting in a church setup, for those of you who are Christians, and in that particular forum, you enter and somehow people don't just have interest with you, they're ignoring you. Many thoughts tend to get into your mind. You start thinking, why are they ignoring me? Sometimes you may think it's because of your dressing. Other times you may think it's because of maybe you don't smell good, or maybe they don't like your looks, or maybe you have something in your teeth, or you have all sorts of things that will go into your mind. And it's amazing that in that very moment when you're ignored, it tends to have a very bad effect on you. It can actually cause somebody even to go into a state of being almost depressed in a function or in an activity. That is something that I know that I have had to work on myself a lot over the years. Especially whenever I know who I am and I enter and I'm expecting, I'm having some particular expectation, and people tend to behave like as though I'm not around. That tends to bring in that kind of a thing. And I know you know what I'm talking about. Now it is even more complicated, or it is even more trying or challenging when you are actually giving yourself another chance. Because many times when you're giving yourself another chance, it basically means you're coming from a situation that was probably not very good, a situation that was a bit messy, or maybe you're coming from some place which you don't want to be at, and you decided to make a transition or to make a change. And therefore, once you're making that change, or when you make that change, the problem is that whenever you go to an environment and people tend to neglect you or to ignore you, what happens is that you end up thinking that has to do with where you're coming from. You start looking back at yourself, you start reflecting at yourself, and you say, now, they are not accepting me because they know my history, or, they don't accept me because they know this and they know the other, and that is why they're behaving the way they are. And all sorts of things can go into your mind. Now, the problem is, if you allow that part of your mind to continue feeling like that, there's a high tendency that you are not able to do what you really need to do. And therefore, this morning, as I shared with you, I want you to understand that it is possible to be ignored, but being ignored does not mean that you are not supposed to achieve or do what you're supposed to do. I know there are some of you who are being ignored by people. You love somebody, you care about somebody, but that somebody has no interest in you. You try to make calls, they don't want to take your calls. You try to do this and you try to do the other, and they're basically ignoring ignoring you, and that is frustrating you. But I am here to let you know that that frustration should not mess you up, and you should not allow that frustration to cause you not to move. Now, it's amazing that the Bible has answers for everything in life, and that is why I like using the Bible. I like using the Word of God as a way of examples and picking issues in the Bible to help us understand some particular things and to see how people came out of it. And therefore today, as I talk to you on how do you handle being ignored and being neglected, I want to use a case study that we find in the book of Esther. Esther is a short book, but I want to pick from chapter number 4 to chapter number 7, and I would like you to go and read it for yourself. Esther chapter number 4 to chapter number 7. Now you need to understand that Esther originally was called Hadassah. Esther eventually became the queen of the land, or in the land of Babylon, but originally she was called Hadassah, and she was originally a Jew who was in exile together with her relative. She was an orphan girl, so she was living with her uncle Mordecai. And while they were together, the king needed a wife, and apparently Esther happened to be picked. I don't want to go into the history and how it went and what caused that and everything. You read it from yourself. Between chapter number 1, 2, and 3, you have the whole story on how that happened. But basically, eventually she becomes a queen. In other words, there was a tremendous change. There was a transition from being Hadassah and becoming the queen of the land, and her name became Esther. They changed the name to Esther. Now, at a particular time, well, that queen was doing her business, taking care of the king of the land and everything. An incident happened in the land, an incident that actually threatened the people who were from where she came from, the Jews who were in exile there. And also, being a Jew, it actually also threatened her own personal life. And the Bible says that her uncle, who apparently was not living very far from the palace, when he had the news of the threat that was there through a certain man that was called Haman, when he had the threat that was there, the Bible says he sent a message to Esther and asked Esther, you know what, you need to come in, because this is probably why you're the queen, because you need to save your people. And the Bible says when Esther heard about it, she got really freaked out. She got scared. Now, there are reasons why she got scared. Number one, she got scared because she was a Jew, and she knew that if this was to happen, she will definitely be a victim. The second thing is because she knew the laws of the land. And one of the laws, which was a very strange law that is interesting, is that you could not enter into the king's chambers without an appointment. Even if you are the spouse, you are the wife, she had a schedule on when she was supposed to meet the king. It's amazing, you know. I look at that and I'm like, man, what kind of life is that? You're somebody's wife, and yet you cannot go to him unless you have a certain appointment. Now that means if you appeared to him or you appeared to them abruptly, the chances are you are going to be killed. Chances are that you're going to perish. And therefore she sent back a message to Mordecai, and she says to Mordecai, listen to me, uncle. I would love to do this, but you know what? If I appear to the king without having a schedule, without having an appointment, you know that means I will perish. Well, Mordecai says, well, you need to do this for us, because if you don't do this for us, God is going to look for another deliverer, and you will perish anyway. And then she says, okay, fine. There are 3 things that Queen Esther did. And those are the things that I want you to pick on, because they teach us on how to behave when you are in a place where you will either be ignored or you are in a place where you are being ignored. When you are being ignored by that business guy that you want to make a deal with, when you're being ignored by your wife or your husband, or you're being ignored by somebody that you care for and somebody who is of value to you, but they simply seem to be snobbing you, or they have no interest in you, how do you do and how do you behave? That's what we're talking about. And there are 3 things that we see that we pick from what Esther did. Number 1, we see Esther, the first thing she told Mordecai is that, listen to me, uncle, if this is going to work, I want you guys to do for me a favor. Number 1, I want you to mobilize people to pray and fast. I want people to pray for 3 days, 3 nights. Let them not eat, let them not drink anything, and I will do the same thing. So what we see, the first thing is that Esther knew, in a scenario where you are being neglected, in a scenario where there is a threat of being ignored, or you will be ignored, and you are being ignored can frustrate you and make you and cause you trouble. She says the one thing that is very important is to involve a supernatural being, and that is God. In other words, she realized that your spirituality at such a time was crucial, and that you can never be able to make in life without involving a divine being. Why am I bringing that part of life? Is because every one of us, you need to understand that when everybody else may neglect you, when everybody else may ignore you, when everybody else may not have interest in you, when you give yourself to God in prayer, God will never ignore you. That's the beautiful thing about God. He will not ignore you. He does not consider your history. He does not consider where you're coming from. He does not consider who you are. All he knows is that when you cry to him in prayer, he will listen to you. So that's the first thing that we see Esther doing, is that she mobilizes a team to pray with her, and she also gets herself engaged in prayer. That is so crucial, and that's important for you. The second thing we see about Esther, this is also very important, and it is important because of exactly the scenario that happened, is that Esther said that if I perish, I perish. So she took courage and boldness. She put in confidence. She said, you know what, I'm going to be daring, and I'm going to just do it. Whatever happens, happens. And the Bible says that the woman decided to appear before the king. She decided to appear before the king. Now I visualize a scenario, and I want you to imagine with me a woman who she had put all her courage, all her boldness into place, and says, you know what, I'm going to confront this situation, and I'm going to deal with it. Now, anybody who is giving themselves another chance is a person who has to be bold. You can never succeed to give yourself another chance if you are fearful, or if you are intimidated, or if you are feeling like as though you cannot be able to make it. People who give themselves another chance are people who are bold. They are people who are daring. They are people who are saying, you know, whatever happens, happens, but I'm going to make this happen again. I'm going to make this thing work. I'm going to have this deal happen. I'm going to have this marriage work. I'm going to get myself back on my feet. It does not matter what people are going to say. It does not matter what it is going to cost. It does not matter how people are going to behave and look at me, but I'm going to do it. And the Bible says that Esther went straight forth into the king's chambers and went and found him in his meetings with his governors and leaders and whatever, sitting on his throne. Now everybody was shocked to see. Now you need to understand, the people who watch you, the people who have been looking at you in your previous life before you started giving yourself another chance, some of them don't like you. Some of them hate you. Some of them are jealous of you. Some of them have desired to have you go down. Some of them have all kinds of sort of thoughts in you. And this is exactly what was happening in the chambers. You need to realize that by the time the queen became queen to this man, there was a competition. There was people were taken from, women were taken from different places. And among these men who sat in these chambers, I'm sure there are some who had presented their daughters, presented their sisters, presented whoever, and when they lost, that definitely meant there was a grudge with this woman called Queen Esther. But the Bible says that against all that and against all those odds, she appeared before him. Now there are two things that were bound to happen in her appearance. One was for the king to actually ignore her. And what was the sign of the king ignoring her? That time the rule was, if the king would have given you attention, it basically means he would have lifted up his scepter, and lifting up his scepter would have meant that he was saying, yes, I'm going to listen to what you're saying and whatever it is that you're presenting before you. The other thing is that the king would basically have just put his scepter down and not do nothing, ignore you, and ignoring you meant being neglected, and being neglected means being done. You're finished. You're dead. The guards knew, the security knew that if the king does not lift up his scepter, you are gone. It doesn't matter who you are dead, you know. So she knew there are two things, either of those two things that are going to happen. One would be for him to bring her into acceptance by lifting up the scepter. The other one was for him to ignore her and ignore her totally. So the thing is, the woman put her courage up, boldness up. She was daring enough. She said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to walk into that meeting, and I will just believe that I'm going to find favor. I'm going to get acceptance. I want to challenge you this Sunday morning. Be daring enough even this week. You know, don't allow that thought of being ignored to stop you, to hinder you, to become a barrier for you. Don't allow that thought. Don't allow that thought of thinking they will not take your call to make you not make that call. Don't allow that thought of thinking they are not going to accept your offer to make you not give that offer. Don't accept that thought of thinking that they are not going to accept your proposal, and then you shelve it aside. You make that proposal. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it, because you never know what is going to happen. The Bible says that the queen went into the chambers, and the moment she was in the chambers, the Bible says she presented herself. Everybody was startled. Everybody was in shock. Everybody was wondering, what in the world is this woman about? And you notice the Bible says the king looked at her and he lifted the scepter. He said, you know what? I'm not going to ignore you. I am going to receive you. That's exactly what I see happening to you. In the rest of this year, I see God allowing people whom you think will ignore you. I see them turning around and they're going to lift the scepter for you. And they're going to say, you know what, we accept it. And guess what? Even if they don't, there are many other people out there that are supporting you and that are standing you. Now, the third thing, and this is very important, is that we realize that the queen did not just appear before the king without a plan and without a strategy. In other words, she knew she only had one shot in this matter. She had only one shot. And in that shot, she needed to maximize and do it properly. So she had organized herself very well. She knew that between talking to him, being accepted, she's going to tell him this and this and this and this. And ultimately, this is when she's going to release the desire or the appeal she was making so that she can save her people. And that's exactly what we say. You go read it for yourself between chapter number 4 and chapter number 7. It's a long chapter. We may not be able to read in the program, but I challenge you to read it for yourself. Or you can watch a movie. By the way, there's a movie called One Night with the King, I think. That's a wonderful movie. You watch it for yourself. One Night with the King. It has the whole story. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, by the way. I watched it in mine. I was just crying. It's a beautiful story. Anyway, the thing is, she organized herself. The problem is that whenever you give yourself another chance and you don't know that it's one more shot you are having, you will not make it. One more chance in your life, giving yourself another chance in your life means you have to put your things together properly. You have to organize yourself properly. You have to deal with everything that may be a barrier. You know, no more mediocrity in your life. You cannot allow yourself to approach another chance with mediocrity. Mediocrity will not work in this case. You have to put your foot down. You have to organize yourself. You have to know exactly what you're going for. You have already gone through some failures, so you don't have to go through the same parts of those failures. You don't have to repeat the same mistakes. You don't have to repeat the same messes, because you have already gotten over them and you have already come out of them. So when you have only one shot, you have to maximize on it and you have to make use of it. 3 things that Esther did. Number 1, she prayed. Number 2, she took courage. She was bold. She was strong. She said, I'm going to do this. She said, I'm going to risk it and I'm going to be daring. And number 3, she knew she had only one shot and she organized herself properly. Organize your speech. Organize how you talk. Organize your proposal. Organize whatever it is that you need to tell them for them not to ignore you. I love you so much. I believe in you, and I know together we shall succeed in this journey of success. Now remember, always keep everything simple, keep it real, to the point, and always anointed. And never forget to always give yourself another chance. See you in our next program, and I'm wishing you a wonderful Sunday and a very, very wonderful rest of your week. God bless you. I love you, and thank you.
I'm no longer a slave to fear. Say it with me. 'Cause I am a child of God. One more time, say, I'm no longer a slave to fear. For I am a child of God. You unwrap